What you're looking at on the left here are a number of examples of UDI barcodes. These are unique device identifier. It's a tracking program recommend or required by the FDA for pharmaceutical companies, medical instrument companies, people who have both tools, implants, consumables to mark their products so that the FDA can provide a informational database to the healthcare community to help identify when there is a recall or when um, a product is expired or anything like that. So this is a program that's been out for a few years, and ID integration was one of several companies that was discussing this when the FDA was starting their conversation about how to implement this. A little bit slow start to get going, but it looks like there's some more interest now. So we thought we'd jump in and kind of show why we are generations ahead of any other scanner provider in terms of validating UDI data and also parsing it and providing error reporting and all the things that you really want to get from a UDI mark. Now, unfortunately, what we've seen out there is there are a lot of vendors that are saying that they have a UDI compliant scanner, and I I challenge that. I don't think I've ever seen anybody selling a barcode scanning product that supports all three families of barcodes. GS1 is the most common claimed compliance to a UDI scanner. Oh, we do UDI validation parsing of GS1 data. Well, that's great, but that's not the entire population of UDIs. There's also HIBC marks and ISBT. ISBT being blood bank largely. So these are international standards. They're used around the globe, and you can't just ignore them. They are part of the UDI program. Again, ID integration is the only provider I know of barcode scanning products that supports all three. And we don't just scan the mark and pass data. We provide feedback to the user as to its validity and its content. So we don't just do a beep, we also have hardware that can do a vibration. So if you're in an environment where you can't have noisy hardware, you can just switch to vibration mode. One beep means you have just scanned a valid UDI device identifier barcode, a G10 in the GS1 world. Two beeps will indicate that you've scanned a barcode that contains product information. So things that are specific to that item, lot number, serial number, expiration date, that kind of thing. If you have one beep, a pause, and two beeps, that means that you've just scanned a mark that has the device information first and appended with some other product information segments afterwards. Four beeps means that this barcode did not pass UDI data syntax rules. Or perhaps the data was fine, but it was in the wrong symbology type, right? And finally, no one else to my knowledge on the planet does this, but one long beep to indicate that the barcode that's being scanned contains malicious Windows system commands to shut off your firewall, to ping an external server, whatever can be issued in a DOS command prompt can be put in a barcode. And BarCodeOS is the only true firewall that is integrated into barcode scanner hardware. All right. In terms of feedback to the user, we have these audible and vibratory things, but you can also put the scanner in a mode where you're outputting a error report in text, and it will not just tell you syntax error, which is what you'll get from a barcode verification system. Now, those systems are required to do image quality checks. You can't do that with a handheld scanner because there's no controlled lighting, there's no controlled distance, right? So you need to use a barcode verification system if you're going to do image quality. But the much bigger quality issue is data, not image quality. So being able to have a much less expensive portable solution that can quickly identify whether or not you do have a problem. This is a much more detailed tool to help people fix any data errors they might have. Lastly, we are completely plug and play. When you open the box, cables are attached. Simply plug it into your Windows PC, and Windows will see it as keyboard number 2. Wherever you put your cursor, that's where the output is going to go. All right, so how does this all work? Well, let's just give a quick demo of how we use this. Let's just pull up, here's a notepad, and I've got some sample barcodes here. And I'm just going to go ahead and scan some marks. This is a GS1 handout that they provide. As I scan the mark, you'll see the data up here. And it's one big long string, right? Because it's a data matrix codes with 3 different fields. Now you could also get that in a long linear barcode, right? So the same thing here, I'll make sure I go down the second line. I can scan the linear and get the same kind of result. Concatenated data spat out to wherever the cursor sits. Now, if you noticed, listen to the beep. Beep, pause, beep, beep. Same thing here. Yep. So now I've got an example here of just a G10 and then a expiration date. So if I scan the G10, I get 1 beep only. If I scan this one up here, I get beep, pause, beep, beep, indicating I get a G10 with the appended data. If I only scan, again, a device identifier type barcode, I get 1 beep. If I now scan something that is not a DI, but rather product information, it beeps twice. Nobody else has this. Nobody else can give you the indication that I scanned the right mark, because many times on a product you'll have both marks on there in linear barcodes. This is the only tool that I know of that can actually give you some feedback. I scanned the right one. Okay, so that's GS1, but what about HIBC? Well, let's take some HIBC examples. Here's a data matrix code, same kind of concept. I'm just going to scan that, and I'll get beep, pause, beep, beep, indicating I've got multiple pieces of information there. And if I scan just one item that's a device identifier, I get 1 beep, right? So if we do something like, here's an example of, I've got 2 barcodes. This one is correct. This one is not, because it uses a different symbology. They both look like data matrix codes, right? But one is actually using a GS1. And now we'll get 4 beeps indicating there's a syntax problem there. All right. Final example. Let's go back to ISBT people. So if I scan their mark, same kind of deal. Notice that the syntax on all of these barcodes is so very, very different from each other. And if I do the same thing, linear barcodes, 1 beep for device identifier, 2 beeps for anything that's product specific. They have support for big long barcodes like that as well. So ISBT, HIBC, and GS1 support feedback for both what kind of mark did I do, as well as does it conform to the specs for data syntax. All right, so let's say there's an error. How do I get it to do anything different? Well, we have a public website. You can get to it at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can use it on your phone. You can use it on an iPad. It doesn't have any constraints. There's nothing to install, just a web URL. And you can create with this form how you want the output of your scanner, what you want that output to look like. So I've got an Excel program here. Let's just pull up this Excel sheet. And if I wanted to do something like populate this spreadsheet, raw data, the DI, the PI, segment 1, 2, 3. I can just go over to this form, paste that in. That changes this item down here, and I'm going to actually say, give me a report when I have an error as well. Now, when I scan this mark with my barcode scanner, this bottom one, and I can go up and put my cursor up here. I'm going to go back to these GS1 examples. See if I can pull this back up. I'm going to go back to these GS1 examples here. Whoa, there we go. And let's see if I can make my camera a little bit smaller here. So let's scan this one here. I'll put my cursor where I want it to start. And what I get is an output of raw tab to device identifier, tab to all the PI. Notice they're comma separated if there's more than one. And then if you just want to have segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, it can parse the information as well. So it's beeping in a way to indicate it's valid, and it's parsing it to fit whatever form requirement you have. Because back in this configuration form, I can include whatever formatting characters I want. If you want it to tab 16 times, put in 16 lowercase t's. You can make it fit any form that you want. And then when it's done with that line, it'll come back and here, let's just do that again. If I go here and I scan, I got that. It comes back to the first line. Now I'll scan my linear code. Same thing. All right. So we can do parsed output. We can do individual barcode output. Now, when you run into something that's an error, you want to kind of see what that looks like too, right? So if it beeps 4 times, normally we recommend that you just block the output when there's an error, because you don't necessarily want to corrupt whatever computer system you're pushing your data into. But let's say that when you have an error, you got a QC group over here that wants to report on error. So as long as I create, all right, I scan something that's valid. Let's take this one for example. Oh, it'll just come out as data. And if I scan something that's incorrect, it'll come out and say this kind of information. It'll give you a sense of how many errors do you have and how do you fix them. Because it gives you a raw scan. This is what's in there. This is the hex version. So sometimes there's some hidden characters like, you know, tab or null or enter or whatever that are in the barcode. And in this way, you'll see those as well. And this one says start character is not recognized. They didn't put the start character in there that would indicate this is a HIBC mark. It's a plus sign. All right, so that's one way of doing it. If you are in a QC group and you want a validation report on everything that you do, you can just simply go back to, let's say full, and I'm going to put in a new line as well for my output. And I'm going to say validation report on the bottom. So now when I go into here, I'll scan some of my marks. So here's a DI mark. It should come back and say, Notepad has Notepad++ has a very strange way of doing that, doesn't it? I'm going to try to use a different tool here for that. Let me see. Let's do it in a text tool that doesn't jump around. So I'll hit the same mark. You'll get something that says passed at the top, and it'll break out that composite barcode with multiple segments telling you what each one is and what the values are. These are all recognized prefixes in this GS1. It tells you what it is. This is a G10, this is expired, this is a serial number. I don't even think you're going to get that from a barcode verifier system. It'll split it out by DI and PI sections, and it says passed at the top. Now, if I hit something that isn't, and oh, let's see, let's take that again. We'll get something like this. I'm missing a start character. All right. So you have the ability to do use this tool as a QC person by having it in the validation report mode all the time. Normal users would probably just have it in block on error. You could also put it on report error just in case you want to have a quick view of what it does. You can parse the output really quick by going out to a publicly accessible form and do whatever you want for the output. And if you hadn't noticed, you can have them be independent. So if you want GS1 marks to be parsed in one way and HIBC marks to be parsed in another, you can do that. Same thing with ISBT. So you have all of these options for how you want the data to come out, making UDI scans far more useful for your own data system. No one else comes even close to providing this kind of value out of the box to make UDI barcodes work with your system. And to make sure, if you're a supplier, that what you're putting on your product conforms to the requirement. If you want more information about any of these tools, you can go out to the BarCodeOS website, which if you do id-integration.net, you'll click on Gen 2, and it'll give you a sense of what BarCodeOS can do. Most of the videos out here, I will say, do apply to the OS DoD realm, but the concepts are the same. And with this video, we'll start doing maybe more specific UDI training videos here. Models and pricing are always available here as well. And we have them divided in terms of the defense industry solutions and the medical industry solutions.